Hey.
What you think about when you're born into a fire? Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. Our brains are bigger than the doubt. We've been thinking for ourselves, never let the truth fade away. This is bigger than ourselves, we won't let the world burn away, burn away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To blame, haters face the world's mistakes. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. And we feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. To blame, haters face the world's mistakes. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway.
So something kind of wild happened today. Let's roll the intro.
Hey Daddies, it's me, the Linda Binda from TikTok. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to thank you for watching Cold Beer Confessionals with Will Bird. I think that's just incredible. I've watched a few episodes and I'm just like very intrigued. But you know what I'm most intrigued in is Big Daddy's meat stick. I heard that it's very thick, like a good old German sausage. You know, Linda and her coochie loves that. Oh, never mind. Let's not go there. Anyways, I hope you have a good show and enjoy it as you can. There's a lot of weird things that go on, especially when it comes from the realm of Linda Bindaland. So, enjoy the show. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Oh, welcome, everybody. I'm Will Bird, and this is the Cold Beer Confessional. Thank you for joining us. I've been trying to think of how, so when I was in Iraq, and we would run missions, right before we would do a mission of some sort outside the wire, we'd go to this thing called the Ready Room. And in the Ready Room, you couldn't bring any electronic devices. Not that a lot of people had working cell phones or whatever, but even if you had a tablet or a cell phone or something that you played games on or a laptop, you couldn't bring anything in there like that. Everybody's clearance was checked. There was 2 sets of doors. You got checked twice, coming in twice, going out twice. You went in there, everything that you were given, if you had paper to read along with or note cards or whatever, everything you were given was taken back up. Our intelligence component would sit there and go over our route and targets and all this stuff, right? And it was it was crazy jumping through these hoops trying to make this work in a foreign country. When you think hey, we're at war, who the fuck is sneaking over here trying to, but everybody, the rooms that we went into, were airlocked. There was an air gap around these rooms where nothing with internet could be within a 10-foot space of the outer walls of these ready rooms. It was just insane. And if I would have done something half of the president's cabinets and the vice president did today, I would probably still be in jail. People are asking the wrong questions about this new story about the Signal app being used for national defense information. Definitely top secret, if not above. They're who let this reporter in? Who invited this reporter in? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All you're saying is well, maybe we should have never known about this. Signal is not an approved way to disseminate this information. If this would have been Joe Biden's White House, this would have been the biggest scandal of Joe Biden. They asked Trump about it, and he's oh, the Atlantic sucks. They asked Pete Hegseth about it, and even though it's been confirmed by people in the White House, he's that didn't happen. I would still be in jail. We're going to read the story and talk about it. It is a huge deal that they're on a group. Everybody's saying text. It was in the Signal app. It wasn't text-based. It wasn't just a regular text message. It was in the Signal app. Not to mention, our enemies now know, if they didn't know before, how laxed we are, and that we're using Signal app, and that we're using unsecured devices, just somebody's cell phone, right? What are the chances that they're cloning these phones right now? That they are fucking trying to clone these accounts or hack these accounts right now to just be plugged into everything. And you can't tell me this is the only time they did it. They were way too comfortable in this group. No one said, why are we using Signal? Oh, or is this the new way we're going to do it? They were just talking like it was an every fucking day exchange. They're doing this all day about everything. And mixing this secret national defense information with, well, let's make sure we say that Biden didn't do nothing and we're doing something. And let's make sure that we make sure the Europeans know that they're going to have to pay us for this. There's going to be punishment if we open back up the sea lanes and they don't do what we say. Like, it's so disgusting the way they even speak about it. Other people are like, this isn't even a scandal. This isn't that big. We know they're incompetent. This is huge. When the Q-tards get on here and pretend to be like secret agents and they talk about skiffs, right? This is what a skiff is for. This is what a skiff is for. When a mission is not the after action review or whatever, battle damage assessment, where he's like, this many people got killed, blah, blah, blah. That stuff will probably be released to the press later. But when they're like, we're going to use this weapon set, we're going to attack at this location, we believe that these targets are here, it'll commence in 2 hours. That type of stuff is what skiffs are for. And almost every cabinet member not only has one at the place they work, they will put a skiff in their home. So you can either use it at work, you can use it at home. There's other locations. You get a list of locations you're authorized to use the skiff at. But this is just out of convenience. Being the laziest motherfuckers on the planet and potentially leaking this information is wild. Wild, dude. Oh, I can't even believe this is a real thing. In the Atlantic today, this is what we're talking about if you don't know what we're talking about. The Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bombs started falling. Again, people that are like, I don't know. Who added this report? You know where you can't accidentally add a reporter? In a skiff. In a skiff, it's almost impossible to accidentally add a reporter. This is by Jeffrey Goldberg. The world found out shortly before 2 p.m. Eastern Time on March 15th that the United States was bombing Houthi targets across Yemen. I, however, knew 2 hours before the first bombs exploded that the attack might be coming. The reason I knew this is that Pete Hegseth, the head of the DOD, the Secretary of Defense, had texted me the war plans at 11:44 a.m. The plan included precise information about weapons, packages, targets, and timing. Weapons, packages, targets, and timing. This is going to require some explaining. The story technically begins shortly after the Hamas invasion of southern Israel in October 2023. The Houthis, an Iran-backed terrorist organization whose motto is God is great, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam, soon launched attacks on Israel and on international shipping, creating havoc for global trade. Throughout 2024, the Biden administration was ineffective in countering these Houthi attacks. The incoming Trump administration promised a tougher response. This is where Pete Hegseth and I come in. On Tuesday, March 11th, I received a connection request on Signal. Again, an app that is outside the control of the U.S. government, Signal, from user identified as Michael Waltz. Signal is an open source encrypted messaging service popular with journalists and other. Signal is super secure. I think that we should probably all be using Signal instead of text messages. What it's not is an authorized way for the government to communicate. Right? If you're at the local Republican convention hooking up with guys on Grindr, use Signal. If you're planning an attack on the enemies of the United States, don't use Signal. who seek more privacy than other text messaging services are capable of delivering. I assumed that Michael Watts in question was President Donald Trump's national security advisor. I did not assume, however, that the request was from the actual Michael Watts. Who would? I have met him in the past, and though I didn't find it particularly strange that he might be reaching out to me, I did think it somewhat unusual given the Trump administration's contentious relationship with journalists and Trump's periodic fixation on me specifically. It immediately crossed my mind that someone could be masquerading as Waltz in order to somehow entrap me. It is not all uncommon these days for nefarious actors to try to induce journalists to share information that could be used against them. This is true, right? You have people making fake accounts and AI things trying to get big publications or reporters to share it so they can just point at them and say, look, you fucked up kind of deal. I accepted the connection request, hoping that it was the actual national security advisor and that he wanted to chat about Ukraine or Iran or some other important matter. 2 days later, Thursday, at 4:28 p.m., I received a notice that I was to be included in a Signal chat group. It was called the Houthi PC Small Group. A message to the group from Michael Waltz reads as follows. Team, establishing a principal group for coordination on Houthis, particularly over the next 72 hours. My deputy, Alex Wong, is pulling together a Tiger team at Deputies Agency Chief of Staff level, following up from the meeting in the Situation Room this morning for action items, and we'll be sending that out later this evening. The message continued. Please provide the best staff person to contact from your team for us to coordinate with over the next couple of days and over the weekend. Thanks. The term Principals Committee generally refers to a group of senior-most national security officials, including the Secretaries of Defense, State, and the Treasury, as well as the Director of the CIA. This is an actual term they use, a Principals Committee. It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyways, that I have not been invited into a White House Principals Committee meeting, and that, in my many years of reporting on national security matters, I had never heard of one being convened over a commercial messaging app. Again, if this would have been Joe Biden, they would have literally blamed Joe Biden. They would have said, he's so dumb, his brain is mush, he probably thinks that signal means the TV signal and he signed everybody up for an account. This would be the biggest controversy of his presidency. 1 minute later, a person identified only as Mar, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, wrote, Mike Needham for State, apparently designated the current counselor of the State Department as his representatives. At the same moment, Signal user identified as J.D. Vance wrote Andy Baker for VP. 1 minute after, TG, presumably Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, or someone masquerading as her, wrote Joe Kent for DNI. 9 minutes later, Scott B., apparently Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, or someone spoofing his identity, wrote Dan Katz for Treasury. At 4:53 p.m., a user called Pete Hegseth wrote Dan Caldwell for DOD. And at 6:34 p.m., Brian wrote Brian McCormick for NSC. One more person responded. John Ratcliffe wrote at 5:24 p.m. with the name of a CIA official to be included in the group. I'm not publishing that name because the person is an active intelligence officer. So they've already burnt one asset here. Like, what the fuck? And all we're doing right now is getting people of contact. The principals had apparently assembled, and all 18 individuals were listed as members of this group, including various National Security Council officials, Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East and Ukraine negotiator, Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff, and someone identified only as SM, which I took to stand for Stephen Miller. I appeared on my own screen only as JG. By the way, sorry for being late. Liam had this long tournament, golf tournament today, or match today. He actually did really well. He hit like right in front of the coach and in front of like a couple other parents. He hit like a 30-some foot putt, probably by complete accident, but He hit it. It's pretty amazing. But I didn't even get him home till like after 9 p.m. I hate that. It's an hour. The place where they play sometimes is an hour away. It's a nice golf course, but it's an hour away. That was the end of the Thursday text chain. After receiving the Waltz text related to the Houthi PC small group, I consulted a number of colleagues. We discussed the possibility that these texts were part of a disinformation campaign initiated by either a foreign intelligence service or, more likely, a media gadfly organization, the sort of group that attempts to place journalists in embarrassing positions. And sometimes they succeed. I have very strong doubts that this group was real. I had very strong doubts that this group was real because I could not believe that the national security leadership of the United States would communicate on signal about imminent war plans. I also could not believe that the national security advisor to the president would be so reckless as to include the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic in such discussions with senior U.S. officials, up to and including the vice president. They want to criticize every other department in the world, but look at these fucking retards running around in charge. The next day, things got even stranger. At 8:05 a.m. on Friday, March 14th, Michael Waltz texted the group, "Team, you should have a statement of conclusions with taskings for the president's guidance this morning in your high side inboxes." High side is government parlance, refers to classified computer and communication systems. State and DOD, we developed suggested notification lists for regional allies and partners. Joint Staff is sending this AM a more specific sequence of events in the upcoming in the coming days, and we will work with DOD to ensure COS, OVP, and POTUS are briefed. At this point, a fascinating policy discussion commenced. The account labeled JD Vance responded at 8:16 a.m. "Team, I am out for the day on an economic event in Michigan, but I think we are making a mistake." He was in Michigan that day. The Vance account goes on to state 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There is a real risk that the public does not understand this or why it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this is, as POTUS said, to send a message. They're even discussing this policy-wise. The Vance account then goes on to make a noteworthy statement considering that the vice president has not deviated publicly from Trump's position on virtually any issue. "I'm not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There's a further risk that we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. I'm willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself. But there is a strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc." I think JD Vance is a yes man to Trump's face, but because he's kind of like a little bitch, like he's always trying to do his own thing in the back and push his own agenda. A person identified in Signal as Joe Kent, Trump's nominee to run the National Counterterrorism Center, his name Joe Kent, wrote at 8:22, "There is nothing time-sensitive driving this timeline. We'll have the exact same options in a month." Then, at 8:26 a.m., a message landed in my Signal app from the user John Ratcliffe. The message contained information that might be interpreted as related to actual and current intelligence operations. At 8:27, a message arrived from Pete Hegseth's account. "VP, I understand your concerns and fully support you raising with POTUS. Important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out. Economy, Ukraine peace, Gaza, etc. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is why we need to stay focused on 1, Biden failed. 2, Iran funded. They're even discussing how they're going to brainwash the maggots to think this is good and peaceful. Biden failed, Iran funded. The Hegseth message goes on to state, waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus. 2, immediate risk on waiting. 1, this leaks and we look indecisive. 2, Israel takes action first or Gaza's ceasefire falls apart and we don't get to start this on our own terms. We can manage both. We are prepared to execute. And if I had final go or no-go vote, I believe we should. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as 2 things. 1, restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest. And 2, reestablish deterrence, which Biden cratered. But we can easily pause, and if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC. %100% operational security. With a journalist in the chat. A chat that they're not supposed to be using. And a journalist in the... This is why they're not supposed to be using it. When people say, well, why was that journalist in there in the first place? Because they're not using a secured means of communication. This could have been a journalist as easy as it could have been a Russian ambassador. I welcome other thoughts. A few minutes later, Michael Watt's account posted a lengthy note about trade figures and the limited capabilities of European navies. At the end of World War II, we basically made a promise to the rest of the world that we were going to build the shit out of our Navy and we would keep the waters peaceful for trade. Right? We told Europe, reconstruct. Don't worry about having the world's biggest Navy. We got it. We'll keep the waters open. And we've basically done that since then. Now Trump wants to hold their feet to the fire and say, well, you guys don't have a Navy. How about if we just don't even help you kind of deal? Which is fucked up. Whether it's now or several weeks from now, it will have to be the United States that reopens these shipping lanes. Per the president's request, we are working with DOD and state to determine how to compile the cost associated and levy them on the Europeans. The account identified as JD Vance addressed the message 845 to @Pete Hegseth. If you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. The administration has argued that America's European allies benefit economically from the U.S. Navy's protection of international shipping lanes. Yes, the whole world does. The user identified as Hegseth responded 3 minutes later, VP, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. But Mike is correct. We are the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger who can do this. Nobody else even close. Question is timing. I feel like now is as good a time as any, given POTUS directive to reopen the shipping lanes. I think we should go, but POTUS still remains 24 hours of decision space. So in the next 24 hours, he can say, don't do it or move it up or delay it or whatever. Pete Hegseth is the only one denying it. Like this guy even got confirmation. Pete Hegseth is the only one denying it. And what he's saying is very important because here's what he's going to try to play. He's saying there were no text message with war plans. So the 2 things he's going to try to say is these weren't war plans. We were just discussing some actions that we might potentially take later on. And 2, these aren't text messages. They were signal messages. Those are the 2 things he's going to try to play when he has to admit this. At this point, the previously silent SM joined the conversation. As I heard it, the president was clear, green light, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe that what we expect in return. We also need to figure out how to enforce such a requirement, e.g., if Europe doesn't remunerate, then what? If the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return. This is also fucked, right? Again, we told Europe and basically the rest of our allies we would take care of the shipping lanes. We would control the seas with our gigantic navy. He even put in screenshots. So here's some screenshots. Let's just make sure our messaging is tight here, and if there are things we can do up front to minimize risk to Saudi oil facilities, we should do it. I fully share your loathing of European freeloading, but Mike is correct. We're the only ones that can do it. As I heard it, President says go. PF says agree. That message from SM, presumably President Trump's confidant, Stephen Miller, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, or someone playing Stephen Miller, effectively shut down the conversation. The last text of the day came from Pete Hegseth, who wrote at 9:46 a.m., agree. After reading this chain, I recognized that this conversation possessed a high degree of, holy shit, verisimilitude. The text, in their word choice and arguments, sounded as if they were written by the people who purportedly sent them, or by a particularly adept AI text generator. I was still concerned that this could be a disinformation operation or simulation of some sort, and I remain mystified that no one in the group seemed to have noticed my presence. But if it was a hoax, the quality of mimicry and the level of foreign policy insight were impressive. It was the next morning, Saturday, March 15th, when this story became truly bizarre. At 11:44 a.m., the account labeled Pete Hegseth posted and Signal a team update. I will not quote from this update or from certain other subsequent texts. The information contained in them, if they had been read by an adversary of the United States, could conceivably have been used to harm American military and intelligence personnel, particularly in the broader Middle East, Central Command's area of responsibility. What I will say, in order to illustrate the shocking recklessness of the Signal conversation, is that Hegseth's post contained operational details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons the U.S. would be deploying, and the attack sequencing. The only person to reply to the update from Hegseth was the person identified as the vice president. He says, quote, I will say a prayer for your victory, Vance wrote. Two other users subsequently added prayer emojis. According to a lengthy Hegseth text, the first detonations in Yemen would be felt 2 hours hence at 1:45 Eastern Time, so I waited in my car in a supermarket parking lot. If Signal Chat was real, I reasoned, Houthi targets would soon be bombed. At 1:55, I checked X and searched Yemen. Explosions were then being heard across Sana'a, the capital city. I went back to the Signal channel at 1:48. Michael Waltz had provided the group an update. Again, I won't quote from this text except to note that he described the operation as an amazing job. A few minutes later, John Ratcliffe wrote, a good start. Not long after, Waltz responded with three emojis, a fist, an American flag, and fire. Others soon joined in, including Mar, who wrote, good job, Pete, and your team, and Susie Wiles, who texted, kudos to all, most particularly those in theater and CENTCOM. Really great. God bless. Steve Witkoff responded with 5 emojis, 2 hands praying, a flex bicep, and two American flags. TG responded, great work and effects. The after-action discussion included assessments of damage done, including the likely death of a specific individual. The Houthi-run Yemen Health Ministry reported that at least 53 people were killed in the strikes, a number that has not been independently verified. And they're cheering in emotes. Like, what the fuck is going on with our country? Do you know how many memos have went out to service members that tell them in no way, shape, or form are they allowed to use Signal for anything? That they are going outside the procedures that they have in place. Again, if I would have done this, I would probably still be in jail. On Sunday, Waltz appeared on ABC This Week and contrast the strikes with the Biden administration's more hesitant approach. Those were not kind of pinprick back and forth, what ultimately proved to be feckless attacks, he said. This is an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. The Signal chat group, I concluded, was almost certainly real, having come to the realization, one that seemed nearly impossible only hours before. I removed myself from the Signal group, understanding that this would trigger an automatic notification to the group's creator, Michael Waltz, that I had left. No one in the chat had seemed to notice that I was there, and I received no subsequent questions about why I left, or, more to the point, who I was. Earlier today, I emailed Waltz and sent him a message of a Signal account. I also wrote to Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, and other officials. In an email, I'll outline some of the questions. Is this Houthi PC small group a genuine Signal thread? Did they know that I was included in this group? Was I, on the off chance, included on purpose? If not, who did they think I was? Did anyone realize who I was when I was added, or when I removed myself from the group? Do senior Trump administration officials use Signal regularly for sensitive discussions? Do the officials believe that the use of such a channel could endanger American personnel? Brian Hughes, the spokesman for the National Security Council, responded 2 hours later, confirming the veracity of the Signal group. This appears to be an authentic message chain, and we are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain. The thread is demonstration of the deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. The ongoing success of the Houthi operation demonstrates that there were no threats to troops or national security. William Martin, a spokesperson for Vance, said that despite the impression created by the text, the vice president is fully aligned with the president. So all J.D. Vance's guy, all he wants to say is like, just because you read this, he loves the president and he never disagrees with him. The vice president's first priority is always make sure that the president's advisors are adequately briefing him on the substance of their internal deliberations, he said. Vice President Vance unequivocally supports this administration's foreign policy. The president and the vice president have had a subsequent conversation about this matter and are in complete agreement. I have never seen a breach quite like this. It is not uncommon for national security officials to communicate on Signal, but the app is used primarily for meeting planning and other logistical matters, not for detailed and highly confidential discussions of a pending military action. And of course, I've never heard of an instance in which a journalist has been invited to such a discussion. Conceivably, Waltz, by coordinating the national security-related action over Signal, may have violated several provisions of the Espionage Act, which governs the handling of national defense information, according to several national security lawyers interviewed by my colleague Shane Harris for this story. Harris asked them to consider a hypothetical scenario in which a senior U.S. official creates a Signal thread for the express purpose of sharing information with cabinet officials about an active military operations. He did not show them the actual Signal messages or tell them specifically what had occurred. All of these lawyers said that a U.S. official should not establish a Signal thread in the first place. Information about an active operation would presumably fit the law's definition of national defense information. The Signal app is not approved by the government for sharing classified information. The government has its own system for that purpose. If officials want to discuss military activity, they should go into a specifically designed space known as a Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, or SCIF. Most cabinet-level national security officials have one installed in their home, or communicate only on pre-approved government equipment, like the phone the president has, right? The lawyer said, normally cell phones are not permitted inside a SCIF, which suggests that as these officials were sharing this information about an active military operation, they could have been moving around in public. Had they lost their phones or had they been stolen, the potential risk to national security would have been severe, and still is. It still is. It's just a end-to-end encrypted messaging service, Signal. Hegseth, Ratcliffe, and other cabinet-level officials presumably would have the authority to declassify information, and several of the national security lawyers noted that the hypothetical officials on the Signal chain might claim that they had declassified the information they shared. But this argument rings hollow, they cautioned, because Signal is not an authorized venue for sharing information of such sensitive nature, regardless of whether it has been stamped top secret or not. There was another potential problem. Waltz set some of the messages in the Signal group to disappear after 1 week, and some after 4. Again, these communications have to be preserved for federal record laws. How can you have a group that auto-deletes messages? That raises questions about whether the officials may have violated federal record laws. Text messages about official acts are considered records that should be preserved. Under the records law applicable to the White House and the federal agencies, all government employees are prohibited from using electronic messaging applications such as Signal for official business, unless those messages are promptly forwarded or copied to an official government account. Jason R. Barron, a professor at the University of Maryland and the former director of litigation at the National Archives and Records Administration, told Harris, intentional violations of these requirements are a basis for disciplinary action. Additionally, agencies such as the Department of Defense restrict electronic messaging containing classified information to classified government networks and or networks with government-approved encrypted features. This is huge, even though it's something about something so silly, because it's not just the Houthis. You think they literally only went to this app to discuss this one fucking thing, and they're not using it for every goddamn thing they discuss? Not to mention it's not approved. Where are the fucking records going? Who's keeping these records? Potentially millions of violations a day just within the cabinet. Several former U.S. officials told Harris and me that they had used Signal to share unclassified information and discuss routine matters, particularly when traveling overseas without access to U.S. government systems. But they knew never to share classified or sensitive information on the app because their phones could have been hacked by a foreign intelligence service, which would have been able to read the messages on the devices. It is worth noting that Donald Trump, as a candidate for president and as president, repeatedly and vociferously demanded that Hillary Clinton be imprisoned for using a private email server for her official business when she was Secretary of State. It is also worth noting that Trump was indicted in 2023 for mishandling classified documents, but the charges were dropped after the election. Waltz and the other cabinet-level officials were already potentially violating government policy and law simply by texting one another about the operation. But when Waltz added a journalist, presumably by mistake, to his principals committee, he created a new security and legal issue. Now the group was transmitting information to someone not authorized to receive it. That is the classic definition of a leak. Even if it was unintentional, and even if the recipient of the leak did not actually believe it was a leak until Yemen came under American attack. All along, members of the Signal Group were aware of the need for secrecy and operational security. In his text detailing aspects of the forthcoming attack on Houthi targets, Hegseth wrote in the group, which at the time included me, "We are currently clean on OPSEC." This is huge, dude. This is huge. And this should be a gigantic fucking story. MAGA don't care. They never do.
I'll tell you something. This is a trip. We had. I tell you something. This is a trip we've had circled on the calendar from the beginning. The Indo-Pacific.
I think Pete Hegseth may not have known that everybody else admitted to it already because he's been on a flight maybe or been traveling. But everybody else has already said, yeah, it's real. Yeah, the J.D. Vance actually does agree with the president. Leave that. Don't think he doesn't. He's never disagreed with the president, ever.
Shifting priorities to make sure we're deterring threats in the future. President Trump's been focused on that. Reestablishing the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and ultimately reestablishing deterrence is critically important. And so we're out here to talk to our commanders and, more importantly, meet with the troops all across the Indo-Pacific, and then our allies and partners, too, who are going to be a critical part of ensuring the future in this region is free. And so we're glad to be here. It's a beautiful day. And a full work day on the plane. Now we've got a full work day here as well. And looking forward to it.
Secretary, can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in the Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both.
Everyone else has already admitted to it. And you're going to go with Russia, fine people on both sides.
Both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning.
This is what happens when you hire a Fox News fucking host as the head of the Department of Defense.
Managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
I heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans. What? Everybody else has already admitted to it, bro. Like literally, the media guy for the vice president was like, "Yep, but don't think that he disagrees with anybody. He loves President Trump."
To the White House now, where President Trump just held a meeting with his cabinet this afternoon. Also in attendance, Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk. This comes as concerns grow after a journalist was included in a group chat regarding attacks on Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Again, it's really scary that they're using this app outside of all this has to be preserved forever. Every document, every phone call, every text message is preserved as a record forever. The reason they're not allowed to use Signal even for basic things is because that's not something they can access for the records of the administration. So even when they use it to say, hey, you want to meet up for lunch at 10, they're supposed to send that a copy of that to an official government account. So at least one side of it's logged.
President Trump commented on it during a meeting with Louisiana's governor today. Take a listen.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in the Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides have been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that.
So basically, that magazine sucks. We leaked it. Who cares?
Don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi joins us now. Olivia, do you know how?
This is insane, dude. Oh, what did Ron Macbeth say?
Okay, I think we're on.
Oh my God, this is an hour long. Was this a stream or something?
So, I'm going to need a drink for this one. In fact, I brought...
Ron Macbeth is an intelligence guy. If he bends to Trump and it makes excuses, I'll never fucking watch him again. He knows the importance of OPSEC. If he bows down and says, well, they could have been blah, 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 I'll never fucking watch him again.
Whole bottle. So I wanted to talk about this signal scandal that just kind of popped up on right out of the blue. It came from the Atlantic, which take that the way you would you want to take that. But apparently, so let me throw this over here. So apparently, the Trump administration accidentally texted a writer from the Atlantic. And what I'd like to do in this video is I'd like to go over some of these. I'd like to go over this article. I haven't fully read the article. I've just read the. In fact, let me post it. I'm going to say going live regarding about the DOD signal. Atlantic scandal. An actual scandal? I don't know. Story. All right. So, what I'd like to do
That's what I do.
Go over some of the elements of this story. I haven't fully read it yet. I'm going to read this with you, so I'm going to learn this as we go. But the first thing I want to talk about is, let me throw this back into my talking head thing here. The first thing I want to talk about is Signal. It's almost like the Great Tyranny. Now, Signal is an app that people have on their phone. I have Signal on my phone. I use it right here. It's a fantastic app. But one of the things that
I have Signal on my phone. We can't use it for national intelligence information.
Noticed is that it seems like in the past 10 years or so, the Army has really focused on using Signal to coordinate activities. And I'm old enough to remember when
activities.
When you were kind of done for the duty day, you were done, right? And now people can just text you, hey, formation time has changed. And I think that's one of the issues with the Army right now. It's that it used to be when you release people for the day, calling everyone back or changing something is a massive issue. Was a massive issue because you had to start the phone tree and call everybody. And now you can just change formation times on a whim. Say, hey, formation times at 0615. Or hey, by the way, everybody needs to pack their insect bar, whatever, right? So I think that people have gotten used to using Signal. And I also think that regarding Signal, maybe the Army needs to have their own device. Like we come up with some kind of phone that maybe uses peer-to-peer, where this phone jumps from phone to phone, trying to send out information, something. There needs to be something that's beyond a civilian application that can easily be leaked. So essentially the story here, let me flip this over into my, what I should do? I'm gonna see if I can drop this into Substack as well. So let me see if I can do like a new post and say, nah, you know what? I'm not gonna do that. Let's just get started. I don't want anyone to get bored here. So that's kind of the basic issue right now. It's that at Signal, or the Army is using Signal constantly. Now this starts out like a guy named Jeffrey Goldberg who works with the Atlantic. I literally just got a subscription to the Atlantic just so I could read this story. That's $87 right there gone. I guess I can write it off. This, essentially, national security leaders included this gentleman in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it'd be real when the bombs started falling. So typically, all this planning that you do is done in what's called a SCIF, a sensitive compartmentalized information facility. And a SCIF, it's typically a room.
100% a SCIF.
This is one good example of a SCIF right here. President Trump is inside the SCIF. So this is a SCIF that's inside Mar-a-Lago. All right. And if you read my novel, The Wind Machine, which is available on Amazon and on Audible if you're a Marine, the people that run the hedge fund in this novel, they actually created their own SCIF. And why they did it is actually a big plot point of the novel. So go to Amazon, buy the novel. You can also get it on Bunker Branding if you want a signed copy. I still got some signed copies. Still got some signed copies on Amazon. I'm pretty sure I do, at least. Yeah, I still got some signed copies on Amazon of the book if you want the actual physical copy. So usually when you're in a SCIF, you're not allowed to have any electronic devices, right? These things are pretty well monitored. And the reason you see a picture here is that odds are they turned off all the classified stuff and the reporter was allowed to take a picture inside the SCIF. As you can see, the screens are all dark, are all covered up, right? You can get special permission. But even if you have like a heart monitor or something like that, if you have a heart monitor, oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, heart monitors, you have to have some type of special waiver. You can be banned from a SCIF. Because they can't tell that this implant, they know that you got electronics inside you. They can't tell if it's a fucking heart monitor or a listening device. Who knows?
I don't know. Okay.
Is it both?
I appreciate that. So essentially, if you have a heart monitor, diabetes.
I'll look into, I have not, but I will look into Natalie Harp.
Monitor. You have to get special permission to have that diabetes monitor, that heart monitor, the pacemaker inside the SCIF. So
yeah, insulin pump. Insulin pump's another one. This wouldn't be typically members of the military, obviously, because they're out, right? That you're not going to have a heart monitor or an insulin pump or whatever in the military. But this would be like somebody in the private sector that needs to be there as well.
Take this stuff seriously. And what you probably shouldn't be doing is talking about stuff you talk about inside the SCIF outside of the skiff. Like stuff that's going on inside of the skiff is kind of in.
Not probably shouldn't be. You're not allowed to. If me and you go into a skiff together, and me and you are sitting there, me and Dr. J are sitting in a skiff together, and I say, okay, the plan is tomorrow at 9 a.m. That's the strike. And then me and Dr. J walk out of the skiff together, and she says, when was the time for the plan? I forgot. We got to go back in the skiff. The shit that's said in there, even if you said it to the people in there in person or over an internet connection or over a phone line, you cannot say outside of there.
In the skiff, and you don't talk about it outside the skiff. And you really shouldn't talk about it on a personal device, which you should consider is unsecure. And if this correspondent from the Atlantic was on this particular, if they were on this particular thread, oh, thank you, Marjan, you don't have to do that. Happy Iranian New Year to you. If you're talking about this, then that's bad, right? You don't want to be talking about this stuff outside of the skiff. So this starts out here by saying, found out shortly before 2 p.m. on March 15th, when the United States was bombing Houthi targets across.
I'm not going to watch him read the whole article.
These were essentially this terrorist group in Israel. So this is, combination left wakeboard. I'm not Destiny. What can I say? All right. So this right here. So this here is the Red Sea, all right? This here is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Oh, you guys can't see anything, can you? Whiteboard present. There you go. So where am I? Combination left, whiteboard. I'm not Destiny.
You had it right.
All right, so this right here is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is the Red Sea. And, of course, the Red Sea leads up here. It goes to the Suez Canal up here. Now, down here, you have the Gulf of Aden.
Yemen.
All right? Here's the Gulf of Aden right here. And if only I could do this. There you go. Here's the Gulf of Aden right here. And Iran, which is...
Yemen has both sides. So they got the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, right? This is Yemen here. I know that Hassan can't find it on a map. I can.
Over here has been sending weapons and equipment to Yemen. Now, this area, roughly this area right here, this is where the Houthis are. The Houthis are an Islamic sect that they hate corruption, right? And it goes all the way back to the kind of the Sunni Shia split, where these Shia sent an emissary to oh my God, the Houthis stuff on them. The United States essentially sent aircraft and an aircraft carrier and the USS Carney, which is a destroyer, over to the Gulf of Aden, the Red Sea, and they were essentially playing defense. Around the 15th, we started playing offense, where we're actually going after a lot of these.
Dr. J, you don't need to tell me about the skiff. You're the one who forgot what time the strike was. Okay? I didn't. You did.
What else do I have here?
Did you not hear my hypothetical?
This is repeat Hegseth and I command. On Tuesday, March 11th, I received a signal connection request. So I received a connection request on Signal from Unified.
You guys remember when the biggest thing in our life was a chess scandal? That a guy could have been cheating with a vibrating anal beads? That was the biggest topic of discussion, was, hey, this guy might have been cheating with vibrating anal beads in a chess tournament.
From a guy identified as Michael Waltz. Signal is an open source encrypted messaging service which is popular with journalists. This person met Michael Waltz in the past. I don't know who Michael Waltz is. Waltz in question was Trump's national security advisor. I've had people contact me and they've said, oh, thank you for the 20 Belgian there. BGN. I actually don't know what that is. But
there's a difference between me. Let's say that you are a whistleblower and you work for the government or some corporation that's known for fucking taking people out, think Boeing, or you work for, and you want to contact me because I'm a journalist. I'm not a journalist, but let's pretend I am. We would probably use Signal, and that'd probably be good for us, right? End-to-end encryption. We don't have to worry about as many things. The U.S. government has all this set up and outlines exactly how not it can be done, not it should be done, how it has to be done.
So, Belgium uses the euro. I don't know why I just said Belgium, but so essentially, when I've had people contact me and they're like, hey, I have some secret information. And I'm like, you can keep your secret information. Because if you have a security clearance, and I started my career as a cleared software developer, I still work in the intelligence community doing contracting. If you have a clearance and you don't need to know something, you shouldn't be talking about that thing. All right?
Exactly right.
Unless you're...
And this guy doesn't even have a clearance. You guys included him. He doesn't even have a clearance. So you disseminated what is classified information to someone without a clearance. They all did.
If you're cleared to know this information, you shouldn't need to know it, right? Let's say I was operating in the Horn of Africa, going after bad guys. I don't need to know what's going on the border with the cartels. I don't need to know what's going on in Russia. I just need to know about what's going on in the Horn of Africa. So that's a very... so I have had people contact me, and the very next group I call is the FBI. Like, this has happened before. Because I don't play. I don't play with clearance. So he accepted the connection request.
So this guy, if he makes excuses for him, I know that he probably leans more right. I know that he's friends with some people that Trump's friends with. But he just said, if someone calls me and tells me classified information, the next call I make is the FBI. If he makes excuses for these people, I'm going to be so fucking pissed.
I was hoping it was the actual national security advisor. You want to talk about Ukraine, Iran, or some other important matter. And then I received a notice I was included in a signal chat group called the Houthi PC Small Group. And apparently over the next 72 hours, Deputy Chief of Staff, okay, all right, so he's talked about the action items that they'd be sending earlier in the evening. Please provide the best staff point as MAR, which might be Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Radcliffe wrote about this. So when everybody assembled, 18 individuals were listed, including national security officials, especially Steve Witkoff. I appeared on my screen only as JG. So after receiving the text, Wall Street related Houthi PC, or it could be actual information, which is even worse. Because again, if you don't have the right to know, the need to know this information, you shouldn't be knowing this information. And this is how you get your cell phone confiscated, or that's how the FBI kind of knocks on your door with a warrant asking you to go through your things. You don't want to mess around with a security clearance. So I could not believe the national security leadership of the United States to talk on signal about imminent war plans. I also could not believe the national security advisor would be so reckless as to include the chief editor of the Atlantic. So the next thing's got even stranger. 8:05. Michael Wilczek to the group team. We should have a statement of conclusions with taskings in your high. I guess J Wicks we call it. So now they're going to ensure that DOD and the president are briefed. At this point, an account labeled JD Vance responded, team, I'm out for the day doing an economic event in Michigan, but I think we're making a mistake. JD Vance goes on to say 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez, 40% of European trade does. The real risk is the public doesn't understand why or why it's necessary. So I guess that might kind of fall into our messaging on Europe.
They don't even have to hack their signal messages. All they have to do is get into their phone, right? Hack their phone, potentially clone their phone, maybe for notifications. I'm not sure how Signal works. But hack their phone, and they'll just be looking at a live feed of their phone while they log into their Signal and do their own thing. I guarantee you enemies took notice. These idiots are using a third-party app right now to plan out missions, and they're in negotiations like Russia, Ukraine, right? China's planning to invade Taiwan in the next few years. I guarantee you our enemies were like, oh my God, if they didn't know already.
Europe, where we're saying like, hey, Europe, you need to get your act together, you don't pay your fair share. But now we're in the Gulf of Aden, the Red Sea, and we're shooting down missiles that mainly benefit Europe because only 3% of America's trade goes through there. So it seems like Vice President Vance didn't really like the idea of performing this attack because it benefits Europe. So then he says, Vance account goes on to make a noteworthy statement saying, I'm not sure the president is aware of how inconsistent his message is with Europe right now. There's a further risk that we may see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. I'm willing to support the consensus of the team to, you know what, I haven't even done this. I'm willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself. There's a strong argument for delaying this a month, messaging, work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc. All right. So I can't believe it. I can't believe this. So the funny thing is that, like, if a private misplaces a secret document, they get nailed to the wall. If someone does something like this, they probably don't get punished, right?
They make excuses.
Back here. So, person identified signal is Joe Kent, Trump's nominee to run National Counterterrorism Center, said there is nothing time sensitive in the timeline. We'll have the exact same options in a month. But then a message landed from John Ratcliffe, the message contained information that might be interpreted to the actual intelligence operation. Message derived from the Pete Hegseth account. I understand your concerns. I fully support you raising with POTUS, President of the United States, important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out. Economy, Ukraine, peace, Gaza. I think this messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is why we need to stay focused on why Biden failed and Iran funded. So the Iran funded thing, that was a big thing in the run-up to the elections and the Trump administration, kind of talking about Biden is funding Iran. And we were. And a lot of this is because Iraq can't supply its own electricity. I think 33% of Iraq's electricity comes from Iran. And what we should do is get into a conversation about why America was in Iraq for over 10 years, 20 years, right, with fighting the ISIS, and Iraq still can't provide its own power, right? So essentially, Iran provides power to Iraq, and then that money goes into a bucket. I think that it goes into a bank account. I think it's either in South Korea, Turkey, or maybe the UAE, and then every couple of months, we go to that bucket, and we allow that country to release that bucket of money to Iran for humanitarian purposes, right? But money is fungible. So that means if Iran is taking that money that they got for supplying power to Iraq, then they don't have to spend that additional money on building weapon systems, right? So technically, we were funding Iran. Hegseth goes on to say, waiting a few weeks or a month does not immediately change the calculus. If I was in charge, Russia never would have invaded Ukraine. If I was in charge, Iran wouldn't do this. If I was in charge, the Houthis never would have done this. Now, we don't have a time machine, right, to go back in time. But I certainly believe that there is a difference in use of force between President Trump and President Biden. And the other thing regarding our freedom of navigation as a core national interest, you know, we don't like it when people touch our boats, right?
One of the things, it's not just a difference in use of force. Trump is unpredictable in not a good way. Right, our plan should be a uniform front where everybody's on the same page. Trump gets offended by a fucking social media post and then wants to attack another country or invade them.
We don't like it when the bad guys launch missiles at our boats.
They shouldn't be able to. It's end-to-end encrypted, so it's only decrypted to be readable for the sender and the receiver not the person handling, doing the handoff between, not the company signal. If it works the way they say it works.
And if we allow the Houthis to get away with this, just launching missiles at our boats with no repercussions, with us just playing defense, it does make us look weak. So he's not wrong about that. But he said we can easily pause if we do. I'm sure we can enforce 100% OPSEC, meaning operational security. I welcome other thoughts. The funny thing is, if you're going for OPSEC, signal's probably not the way to do it. Let's see here. A few minutes later, the Michael Waltz account post. All right. I don't believe France is a single story. I have a number of frigates. Fram, I know is one. Let me see. Equipment, aircraft personnel, ranks. Come on. Did I skip over it? So let's see here. So this goes. Oh, sorry. So they have 3 amphibious assault ships. Sorry, ships and submarines. I did skip over it. So they have 10 air defense. So they operate 3 amphibious.
If you're an officer, if you're a lieutenant, a captain, it doesn't matter. If you're an officer, especially early on in your career, and you did something like this, you might as well just leave the military, right? If you were there and you wanted to be a 20-year guy, or you wanted to be a 30-year guy, or you wanted to work up to this rank, your entire career is ruined. Not only would you be in trouble, not only would it probably cost you money, part of your paycheck, not only could you be disciplined and fucking locked up and shit, depending on how bad it is, but your career's ruined. This will follow you forever. Every promotion board, every new assignment, every time you go somewhere, your career would be ruined.
Amphibious assault ships, which would be useless. 10 air defense anti-submarine frigates. 5 general purpose frigates. Let me take a quick look. One of the things that say to me whatever you want. Like, I might ask you, like, hey, do you like Ford trucks, right? And you might say, oh, no, I'm a Ram guy, right? I'm a Ram guy. But if I look at your browser history, you might be Googling Ford trucks. Like, the browser never lies. The browser is almost like our submind. It's our little brain that kind of sees what, that shows what we're really thinking. Oh, thank you for the £2 there, QA Library. So if the browser is what we're really thinking and what we put on our phone is what we're really thinking, I think if this is real, then we just kind of got a little window into what Vice President Vance was kind of thinking here. And it says, a user identified as HexEp responded, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic, but Mike is correct. We're the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger. I mean, the Chinese could probably do this, but they won't, right? Even though it would make sense for the Chinese to go into the Red Sea and start shooting missiles down because essentially they're farming XP. So I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic, but Mike is correct. We're the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger who can do this. Nobody else is closer. Question is timing. Thank you for that. That's certainly possible. NATO to the sane washing is wild. What is that? What's the switch from being pro-NATO to anti? I'm not anti-NATO. NATO's fantastic. Thanks for the $5 though. So Pete, so here's the thing. If we should go, let's do it. So here's the actual screen.
I don't understand why when he changes screens, it flips his chat backwards. He needs somebody to help him with that.
So in that message from SM, presumably Trump's confidence, Stephen Miller, Deputy White House Chief of Staff, someone playing Stephen Miller effectively shut down the conversation. So the shutdown message was, as I heard it, the president is clear, green light, but the sooner we make clear to use. I gotta type that in. It's a guy like that. All right, so let me go back to the end of this text message thing here. Someone talks, but it wouldn't necessarily know that someone was at a speaking engagement in Michigan, right? And while they're at a speaking engagement in Michigan, they won't be texting, right, if they're speaking on stage. So that would kind of be a way of seeing if this is true. So the next morning, Saturday, March 15th, is when the story became truly bizarre. Let me go back over here. The county Pete Hegseth posted a signal. I will not quote this update or other certain texts. If they had been read by an adversary, they could conceivably use to harm military intelligence personnel. That's good, dude. I'm glad you didn't do that, particularly in the Middle East or CENTCOM, Central Command's area of responsibility. What I will say, in order to illustrate the shocking recklessness of the signal conversation, is that Hegseth posted operational details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons that the U.S. would be deploying, and attack sequencing. The only person to reply to the update was the vice president. I will say a prayer for victory, and 2 other people added a prayer emoji. So, I think that everything in that conversation was probably okay, right up until the point that. Someone asked me what techniques would you use to determine if an event was a false flag operation.
It is technically okay from an OPSEC point of view, right up until the end. It's not okay for preserving the records around this administration.
I just said. It's like I would have to look at the timelines. If someone's texting at an odd hour or checks these updates, I've actually deployed apps on Apple before. The Apple Store is pretty diligent about checking. Nation firm, yeah, it's a huge problem in the Army. People are using Signal all the time. First, the military gets used by film and theater nerds. Tesla Trekkie. If the Signal chat was really reason, Houthi targets soon be bombed. About 11:55, I checked X, and explosions were heard across Sana'a, the capital city. But back to the Signal channel at 148, Michael Waltz provided an update. Again, I won't quote from the text, except to note that he described the operation as an amazing job. Someone else had a good start. Not long after, 3 emoji, a fist, an American flag, and fire. Good job, Pete and team. Flex bicep to American flags. Good work. Oh, here it is right here. On Sunday, Waltz appeared on ABC This Week, contrasted the strikes with the Biden administration's more hesitant approach. Again, he's not wrong. Here's kind of the deal with NATO. NATO is a defensive alliance, right? And all of NATO, I think all of NATO has, I want to say 2.2 million troops if you add, and there's only 2 countries in NATO that have expeditionary capability, meaning they can actually go overseas and launch a sustained attack at scale. Those 2 countries are the UK and France. That's it. Every other country in NATO has a defensive army. They just don't have the logistical lift to go somewhere else and do stuff. Now, occasionally you'll see like Dutch frigates and ships going to like a hurricane or a typhoon or something like that. But for the most part, they can't forward deploy without the U.S. So from a defensive standpoint, NATO can hold its own in Europe. From an offensive standpoint, you definitely need the U.S., Great Britain, and France. Someone else said, could the reporter Oh boy, I gotta scroll through all these. Could the reporter get in trouble for releasing the text via the public? I probably would have contacted the FBI. I don't think he could, because he didn't talk about any of the, I think everything up until
He can't get in trouble, and he's under no requirement to contact the FBI.
we're actually giving the strike package information. It probably should have been discussed in a SCIF, in a sensitive compartmentalized information facility. But everything like after that, when they're talking about the actual stuff, yeah, he made the right decision not releasing that, right? Because just because something is public doesn't mean it's actually cleared, right? And that's why people have sent me, they said, hey, look at this secret document that was leaked. I'm like, I'm not looking at that secret document. I can't look at it. I have no right to look at it. Even if something is in the public domain. If the government has it declassified it, you shouldn't look at it. That's kind of the way this whole thing works. So, if anything, the reporter's phone is certainly in danger of being confiscated and inspected. There's some other questions here. How much influence does Russian propaganda have in the White House? 1 to 10? I'll probably say about a 5 or a 6. Because I've physically seen people like Tulsi Gabbard spout Russian talking points. JFK Jr. spoke.
I want to see.
Well, this is the craziest story I've seen in a long time. So it looks like senior U.S. officials, to include the vice president,
That video's too fucking long.
Secretary of State, and others were discussing ongoing military operations, classified information being released on an unsecured network. In this case, a Signal group chat. And we know that because they invited a reporter into the group, and the reporter wrote a story about it. And that story came out today, which is almost too hard to believe, if I'm being honest. So let's start there. In this story, they did go to some of the principals asking for comment. When they heard back from here, Brian Hughes, the spokesman for the National Security Council, looked at this and said, quote, this appears to be an authentic message chain, and we were reviewing how an inadvertent number was added. Now, I should note before we get into this, I will update this as the information comes in, but the only principal or senior official that has commented on this so far was President Trump, and he said, I'm just learning about this now, I don't know anything about it. So I do expect in the coming days we'll hear from all of the people on this list, because this is a lot. So the title of the article here, and this article will be linked in the description below if you want to read it in its entirety, titled, The Trump Administration Accidentally Texted Me Its War Plans. U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bomb started falling. This is written by Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic. So to kind of walk through what happened here, there's a little background. He says on March 11th, he received a connection request on Signal from Mike Waltz. He didn't know if it was actually the Mike Waltz, like National Security Advisor, or someone else, but he assumed, hey, it could be. You know, this is a guy who writes for The Atlantic, and Signal is a platform I and a lot of people use to, it's better than text messages, if you will. It's more encrypted than that. It's not secure. It's been hacked plenty of times. Our adversaries can certainly get into that when needed, but it is something that a lot of reporters use, so it wasn't entirely out of the ordinary. He says he accepted the request, hoping that this was going to lead to something about national security or Ukraine, Iran. Again, relatively normal request for somebody in any administration to reach out to a reporter like this and set up that line of communication. So he accepted and waited. 2 days later, he received a notice that he was included in a Signal group chat called, or invited to this group chat called Houthi PC Small Group. And this is where it starts to go off the rails. It's going to veer hard left or right. I don't know. It's just going to get out of control here in a little bit. But right now, it's just getting a little bit bumpy. A message from Mike Waltz, anyway, that I've never been invited to a White House Principals Committee meeting, and that my many years of reporting on national security. Listening in. So at this point, still, Goldberg is saying, I don't think this thing was very real. It seems strange that there'd be this national security meeting on Signal. He also couldn't believe that even if that did exist, that the national security advisor would be adding a reporter from The Atlantic. So he's like, this can't be. And the vice president's in there, by the way. So he's like, I just don't still think that this is actually real, but no harm, no foul. He's just kind of sitting there waiting for it to happen, right? He says the next day things got even stranger. He says we were prepared to execute. This is a message coming from Secretary of Defense, or what looks to be the account for Secretary Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Quote, we were prepared to execute. Talking about strikes on the Houthis. If I had a final go or no go vote, I believe we should. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as two things. 1, restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest. 2, reestablish deterrence, which Biden cratered. But we can't easily pause. And if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC. Operational security, as in, so people don't know, they aren't supposed to know about the operation that's ongoing. There's a reporter listening at this point. Now there is some policy debate here. Again, Goldberg published a lot. He also withheld a lot, and we'll get into that here in a minute, because there was classified information that, from all I can tell, is not included in this assessment. What he published was some back and forth policy discussion, which you can argue maybe is sensitive to a degree, but it's all stuff we've heard before and seen debate over. So I wouldn't put it in that category. The actual classified information does not make it into the report. They say in this Houthi exchange back and forth, the account identified as J.D. Vance, so the vice president, addressed a message at 8:45 to Pete Hegseth, quote, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. Hegseth responded to the VP saying, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. But Mike is correct, talking about Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor. We're the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger who can do this, and nobody else even close. Question is timing. I feel like now is as good a time as any, given POTUS directive to reopen shipping lanes. I think we should go. And there's some of these screenshots of these texts that I'll put up on the screen here as well, so you can see some of these. And it just continues to veer. So Goldberg at this point says, I still feel like this is not genuine. This can't be right. But he noted, though, if this was a hoax and people were trying to trick him and like feed a reporter false information, which is not all that out of the question, right? He says he was surprised at this point by the level of foreign policy insight, how closely those foreign policy insights align with the principal's actual views, and then how close they were able to mimic how some of these folks talked and interacted. So he was like, wow, this is maybe still a really elaborate ruse. But he says it was the next morning, Saturday, March 5th, when the story became truly bizarre. At 11:45 a.m., the account labeled Pete Hegseth posted a Signal team update, quote, and he actually at this point says, I'm not going to tell you what he said. Goldberg said, what I will say in order to illustrate the shocking recklessness of the Signal conversation is that Hegseth posted the post contained operational details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons the United States would be deploying, and attack sequencing. So up to this point, it's like reading somebody's DMs that you shouldn't have access to. All right, and you can debate all day whether the reporter should have raised his hand and said I shouldn't be here, or what's going on, or what's this all about. But really, from everything that I can tell up until this point, it just seems like maybe somebody's listening in that they wouldn't want listening in. It doesn't sound like there's some juicy tidbits in there between Vance and Hegseth and Mike Waltz and like political drama type stuff, if you will, but nothing that's all that shocking, really. And from what I can tell, nothing that's classified or sensitive. This is when that line becomes crossed. When you're talking about targeting information, weapons they're going to be using, attack sequencing, that's classified information. The attack has not yet taken place. It is getting ready to be carried out by U.S. service members in the Middle East. So that information being on an open platform immediately puts at risk the lives of the American sailors, soldiers, airmen, Marines, anyone.
Why do soldiers agree to follow through with orders to wrongly arrest those? There's no soldiers arresting immigrants.
It's involved in this operation. They say, according to the lengthy text, the first detonations in Yemen.
In fact, when we deploy soldiers to the border, they are there in an advisory role, to where they basically just monitor and call ICE to do shit.
be felt 2 hours later at 1:45 p.m. Eastern time. So I waited in my car in a supermarket parking lot. If the signal chat was real, Houthi targets should soon be bombed. At 1:55, I checked X and searched Yemen. Explosions were being heard all across Sana'a, the capital city. And that's when it really starts to drive home to the reporter, like, oh my God, that was accurate strike information being thrown out over signal. To, again,
yeah, no shit.
A lot of different ways. We'll get into some of the nuance and what is okay and what's not okay here in a minute, but that's not all that surprising. But the classified strike information, the targeting information before the attack is carried out, was shocking to the reporter, shocking for me to see now, and it's getting a lot of attention right now across the internet.
I was actually there for it was a weird thing. I didn't get to stay for the whole time, but I've been on rotation at the border.
At this point, after the attack's kind of wrapped up, he says, I removed myself from the signal group, understanding that this would trigger an automatic notification to the creator, Michael Waltz, that I'd left. No one in the chat had seemed to notice that I was even there. After I received no subsequent questions about why I left, or more to the point, who I was. Again,
I don't ever talk about it because I was there for a very minuscule amount of time compared to like what I was supposed to be there. But I've been there. We basically set out an OP, an observation post, and radioed what we saw.
Just completely under the radar. He said earlier today, so today, this morning, he emailed Waltz and sent him a message on his Signal account. He also wrote to Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, and other officials. In an email, I outlined some of my questions. Is the Houthi PC small group a genuine signal threat? Did they know that I was included in this group? Was I included on purpose? If not, who did they think I was? Did anyone realize who I was when I was added, or why I removed myself, or when I removed myself from the group? Do Trump administration officials use Signal regularly for sensitive discussions? Do the officials believe that the use of such a channel would endanger American personnel? And it's interesting kind of trying to get inside Goldberg's head at this point where he's still like, I wasn't supposed to be there, right? Like, it was such a weird thing to get invited to, right? But it's hard to grasp this in so many ways. Anyways, that's when he reached out to Brian Hughes, the spokesman for the National Security Council, who responded by saying this appears to be an authentic message chain, and we were reviewing how this inadvertent number was added to the chain. Now, getting into some of the fallout here, and this stuff starts to get really over my head because you're talking about the legality of sharing this information.
I can't even believe how quickly they admitted to it. Like, oh yeah, this looks authentic. Oh yeah, the vice president loves Trump. Don't get it twisted by those messages that he was in saying he disagreed with him.
And it's weird because it's not just sensitive information that should or shouldn't be shared, but how it's accessed, the declassification process, a lot of stuff here goes over my head. So take all of this with a grain of salt. I'm taking this directly from the Atlantic article. We should definitely wait for more experts, more professionals in this realm to weigh in. But at a high level, he says conceivably Waltz, by coordinating a national security-related action over Signal, may have violated several provisions of the Espionage Act, which governs the handling of national defense information. That is according to several national security lawyers interviewed by his colleague Shane Harris for the story. He said what they did is actually went to a bunch of lawyers and laid out like this exact scenario, but they kept everything hypothetical and asked questions of like who's at fault and what's the problem. And this is over the last couple days because again, this event was 2 weeks ago. So they're able to kind of lay all this out and run through all this with lawyers, and the lawyers picked apart like this would be a problem, that wouldn't, and we'll get into some of that here. They noted that the Signal app, we talked about this earlier, it's encrypted, it's good, it's better than regular SMS messaging. They said it is not approved by the U.S. government for sharing classified information. So there's no error on that. Now they said Hegseth, Ratcliffe, and other cabinet level officials do have the authority to declassify information, and they said that it's possible in this hypothetical conversation that they might claim that they declassified the information before sharing it. We said this argument rings hollow because Signal is not an authorized venue for sharing information of a sensitive nature, whether or not it has been stamped top secret or not. And I should note on the actual targeting information of what was struck in Yemen, we actually don't have that yet publicly. So we've seen some high level talks about headquarters buildings were hit, weapons storage facilities, things like that, but we haven't seen any details of what was actually hit in Yemen. They say there was another potential problem. Waltz said some of the messages in the Signal group that disappear after 1 week and some after 4. That raises questions about whether the officials have violated federal records law. Text messages about official action considered records that should be preserved. That's one of the things I was getting at when I was saying you get into all this weird like you can't use Signal for this, but if you are going to use Signal, then you have to use it in this way. So it's a lot here. They say several former U.S. officials told Harris, his colleague who was doing this investigation to the legal portion, said they'd use Signal to share unclassified information and to discuss routine matters, particularly when traveling overseas without access to U.S. government systems. But they knew to never share classified or sensitive information on the app because their phones could have been hacked by foreign intelligence service, which would have been able to read the messages on the device. And that is the big takeaway here. So in this particular case, what it looks like is an open and closed event.
What do you want to bet that foreign adversaries already knew how reliant they were on Signal, and even since the campaign, they've been monitoring the shit that's going on in Signal through their hacked phones?
Where that information does not appear to, if it did make out and our adversaries were able to get their hands on it, it doesn't appear to have had any impact. Okay, the Americans involved in the strikes on the Houthis, there was no equipment was lost, nobody was injured, nobody was killed, and from what we can tell, the strikes were effective. So in this isolated event, it does not appear to have had any impact, which is great. We don't want this stuff to happen at all, but if it does happen, it's really, really good news that there's no fallout. The bigger question here that I imagine we're going to start seeing asked is, if this was being discussed over Signal, it probably wasn't the first thing, right? This wasn't the first time this group was like, hey, you know what we should do today? Houthi group message app. And then Secretary Hegseth is like, yeah, well, we're on it. Here's the strike location data. So it raises the question of if this degree of sensitive information was being shared over Signal, which again can be and has been in the past hacked by our adversaries, what else has been made public unintentionally? Whether it's information about negotiations with Israel and Hamas and trying to get hostages back out of Gaza, whether it has to do with the deployment of our troops in Asia trying to counter China, whether it has to do with weapon shipments and intelligence being shared with Ukraine, or even the negotiations with Ukraine. How much of that is coming across Signal that maybe isn't necessarily, this is another way to think about it, maybe isn't necessarily top secret or classified information, but not something we would want public. And if it's being shared on a public forum, like our public app like this, Signal, it does run the risk of falling into the wrong hands. So again,
that was Preston Stewart, everybody.
It's really remarkable. Probably the most sensitive information we have in the armed forces are pending military operations. And in this case, we're talking about the lives of Navy and Air Force flyers. By the way, we also ought to assume that Signal has been penetrated by many intelligence organizations, to include the Russians and the Iranians. So you're basically putting the lives of U.S. service people at risk. You're also displaying to the Houthis what targets are after, and so they can take measures to disperse or avoid the attack. It's a sense of arrogance. And by the way, I also think it's an attempt to avoid accountability under the Official Records Act. These people have been routinely using Signal, I'll bet you, for many...
Well, I've just noticed in the news because I got like, I don't know, Google sets up like my news that they suggest to me or whatever, and a lot of it's tech related, that there has been increased attacks from places like Russia and Iran against Signal. Signal's reporting like we're having these attacks. So if they're stepping it up for a reason. It's not because they want me and my wife sending nudes, right?
Other types of sensitive discussions, knowing they wouldn't be filed and available for researchers or investigators in the coming years. It's really a disgraceful situation. If that had been a bunch of majors and lieutenant commanders coordinating an attack, they'd all get fired and probably be subject to criminal prosecution. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, for sure. They'd be in fucking jail. They're just going to downplay it. The maggots are just going to eat it up, and there you go. Who does Trump sound like?
Zelensky shouldn't have allowed this war to happen.
He's no angel. He shouldn't have allowed this war to happen.
Zelensky had a desire to fight Russia.
Zelensky decided that I want to fight.
Zelensky is gambling with World War III.
You're gambling with World War III.
Zelensky's poll ratings are low.
His poll numbers aren't particularly great.
So, Ukraine has to have elections if it wants to sit at the negotiating table.
When they want a seat at the table, you could say the people have to... Wouldn't the people of Ukraine have to say, like, you know, it's been a long time since we've had an election?
Zelensky is disrespectful because he is used to talking to the Biden idiot.
What you're doing is very disrespectful. That wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who is not a smart person.
There is great probability that Ukraine will become Russia.
They may be Russian someday.
Americans have adopted our point of view.
What has been said in this studio for a long time is now being said by the American administration.
It's such a pleasure to watch. We rejoice whenever this happens in the enemy camp.
That should be terrifying. Multiple Russian-aligned threat actors have been observed targeting individuals of interest via privacy-focused messaging app Signal to gain unauthorized access to their accounts. The most novel and widely used technique underpinning Russian-aligned attempts to compromise Signal accounts is the abuse of the app's legitimate linked devices. So you can link like your two phones or your phone and your PC to the same account. That enables Signal to be used on multiple devices concurrently, the Google Threat Intelligence Group said in a report, GTIG. Damn it, I said Google over here. My phone's going crazy. In the attack spotted by the tech giant's threat intelligence teams, the threat actors, including one of its tracking as UNC 5792, have resorted to malicious QR codes that, when scanned, will link in a victim's account to an actor-controlled Signal instance. As a result, future messages get delivered at the same time to both the victim and the threat actor in real time, thereby granting threat actors a persistent way to eavesdrop on all of the victim's conversations. Google said UAC 0195 partially overlaps with a hacking group known as UAC 0195. These QR codes are known to masquerade as group invites, security alerts, or legitimate device pairing instructions from the Signal website. Alternatively, the malicious device linking QR codes have been found to be embedded in phishing pages that purport to be specialized applications used by the Ukrainian military or other people around the world, other countries. UNC 5792 has hosted modified Signal group invitations on actor-controlled infrastructure designed to appear identical to legitimate Signal group invites. So this QR code, what they can embed, let's say you have a QR code to join this Ukrainian war update page or group, right? Ukrainian warning, bombing warning, and they'll put this on social media, and you scan it with your phone because you want to be part of this text that tells you when bombs are coming to Ukraine. It'll still take you to that group, but also embedded in it will link your phone to their whatever they're using. It'll link the two together as an invite code, and then it'll just forward you to that group by using QR codes. They've really been stepping this shit up. This was just come out February 19th. I knew I'd seen some articles about them stepping up, trying to get into Signal. Why do you think that is? Spy on Ukrainian military through Signal. Jesus Christ. Targeting Signal users. Malicious linking. Multiple Russian-assigned threat actors, all attacking Signal. The Google thing is called Signals of Trouble, the Google report. Find ways to snoop on Ukrainian Signal app users. Jesus Christ, dude. We're so fucked, right? Is it worth pretending we're not fucked? Is anyone actually surprised? Hegseth was probably drunk. Vance was probably multitasking while watching the kids so his wife could go shopping for her trip to Greenland to help JD plan for G-Day. G-Day is America's invasion of Greenland to ensure democracy around the world can thrive. Oh. There was, hold on. I know.
Zelensky shouldn't have allowed this war to happen.
He's no angel.
I saw this post by The Daily Show earlier. It was pretty funny. Here's their here's their other messages they were sending. Is Tavo back near me? Question marks. Rocco Bell, you can walk through drive-through. So, drunk Googling. Should we withdraw from the UN, says Marco Rubio. JD Vance, laugh out loud, yes. Hey, who changed my profile picture? Christy Nome just sent a youth soccer team to Gitmo. JD Vance says, nice. Guys, who's doing that? It's getting bigger. Oh. Does anyone know like 400 good babysitters from Elon Musk? Bombing some brown country this afternoon. Not sure which one yet. From Mike Waltz. JD Vance, great. The Daily Show, you're doing what? Mike Waltz, you're not supposed to be here. The Daily Show, oh, sorry. Mike Waltz says, not you. JD Vance was supposed to be there. Phil posted a video driving around in a fucking Rolls Royce. Are you shitting me?
What's up, everybody? Long time no see. I'm going to be back in action tomorrow. Sorry I couldn't do it tonight. I'm just really, really tired. I mean, from Hawaii.
That's the Starlight headliner. That's the chairs. That's the Spectre.
To the East Coast in a day is brutal. So I'm back on the East Coast today. I'm going to be home all week. So I plan on having about 2, maybe 3 lives this week. I think it's going to be, how it's going to turn out, it's probably going to be Tuesday, Thursday. for the lives, and then possibly a day this weekend. If it is a day, it's probably going to be Saturday. I think that's going to be the day that makes.
Did you guys see the documents that he filed of how much he was making from Goldco with the court? Now, he could be lying, but holy fuck, how much he's making a month?
Makes the most sense. So, sorry about last week. I know the extended absence always sucks, but March every year, we always have a family event going on. We always have a spring break for the kids, and we take them out to our Maui property and just relax. I didn't even really talk to many people last week other than the people that I was with. My phone.
I mean, it's a $500,000 car, right? $500,000 car. Let's see. Is this, that's Marty Like Me Now. I don't know if it was on their account. I know it was on Shaq. Saw that. Here we go. I make my living in part as a social media personality who receives commissions based on advertising. One of my major affiliates, advertisers Goldco, a firm that offers tax-deferred retirement plans backed by precious metals instead of more conventional securities-backed plans. Goldco pays commission to me as a result of the contracts generated via my social media from persons who roll their conventional retirement plans over to precious metal-backed plans. The following information is exemplary of the commissions I received from Goldco prior to defendants' defamatory statements about me. October 2023, $1.3 million. November 2023, 1.5. December 2023, 1.035. And December 2023, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes to January, 500,000. February, 564,000. March, 264,000. April, 978,000. I estimate that as a direct and proximate result of defendants' defamatory statements, I have lost in excess of $2 million in revenue from Goldco alone. Those are monthly payments. We knew he was making a lot. He actually filed that back in 2024, like in, well, it says right there, 5/24/2024.
Demonic practice. Here they are together, the Pastor Berger and Moses Mike Johnson, calling out demonic practices like secularism. Okay, next up. Recently, Johnson has described his conversations with Trump to the pastor, according to Berger. After Russia invaded Ukraine, Berger said in a sermon that he'd advised some congressmen to see the conflict through the lens of Ezekiel 38 and 39, parts of the Bible some see as prophesying a great war before the second coming. He did not specify what that meant from a policy perspective.
Oh my God, we got these motherfuckers taking advice on the goddamn second coming of Christ.
For 31 months.
These people are rapture.
Thank you for the
They
resubscription.
see the horrific attack on Ukraine, a sovereign democratic nation, is somehow something to do with the rapture. This is why America is spiraling down a toilet right now, because a lot of these Republican, whacked out, far right evangelical politicians do and believe all of this stuff with impunity, because many people are too scared to call out this type of cult behavior for what it is, because then they think that it's going to have the appearance that you're attacking religion. This is a terrible idea, and it deserves to be completely eviscerated. That Moses Mike Johnson and some dipshit preacher are thinking that the Russia-Ukraine conflict has to do with the second coming of Jesus Christ. That is beyond batshit crazy. Okay, put up the next slide. An energetic 60-year-old white OT and penchant for preaching in sneakers and jeans, Berger has strong views on a wide range of issues, including economic policy and public health. He is vehemently opposed to the World Health Organization, which Trump moved to withdraw the United States from last month, and recently predicted that COVID-19 vaccines will result in, quote, young people dropping dead all over the place. He attacked the World Economic Forum at length in a recent sermon, accusing it of taking advantage of COVID-19 to implement their satanic plot. So here we have a guy who doesn't believe in science, and the Speaker of the House, the leader of the Republican Congress. I mean, you've got Trump and Musk and Putin, and then Moses Mike Johnson. And these people believe that vaccines are going to cause people to, quote, drop dead all over the place. Mind you, let's not forget that COVID caused 1 million deaths in the United States of America, but these pro-life politicians don't give a shit about that. And then that somehow the COVID-19 vaccine is satanic, and this is the advisor to the Speaker of the House.
It's wild, dude. The world we live in is fucking wild.
Talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
I'm going to be responsible here and not disclose the things that I read and saw. I will describe them to you. The specific time of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets, meant to be killed in that attack. Weapon systems, even weather reports, or that the government is I don't know why Hexet was sharing it with everybody. I mean, the precise detail, and then a long section on sequencing. This is going to happen, then that is going to happen. After that happens, this happens, then that happens, and then we go and find out if it worked. I mean, he can say that it wasn't a war plan, but it was a minute by minute accounting of what was about to happen, organized by CENTCOM, Central Command, which is what happens when we're planning out an assault, right? Minute by minute markers, or like advancement markers. We have to do this before this can happen, but as soon as that happens, this needs to happen immediately afterwards. The military
completion, I guess,
of the Middle East, the broader Middle East. This is their plan, and he was taking their plan and sharing it with a bunch of civilian leaders. It's interesting because as I'm reading it at 11:44 a.m. on Saturday morning, the 15th, seeing that the Houthis are not going to know about this for another couple of hours.
And you know about it.
Well, and I know about it, and I'm thinking to myself, honestly, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm glad.
To just resubscribed for 25 months.
Thank you for the resubscription, Rob P.
That Mike Waltz didn't invite a Houthi into the group, or a Russian spy, or an adversary of the United States. But put that aside. I'm reading this and I'm wondering, not only why am I reading this, but why would the Secretary of the Treasury need to know the precise?
Exactly. It's almost like they're just having some type of fucking hop session or some shit. The Secretary of the Treasury needs to know minute by minute updates on what's happening on the ground in Yemen during a military operation.
Precise attack sequence of this upcoming operation. Again, I don't want to talk about weapon systems, packages, targets in any specificity because, I'm trying to be, I want to be a responsible person, and I'm more interested in the decision making anyway than I am in the actual technical details of it. But the whole thing is just very flummoxing to me because I haven't seen this kind of unserious behavior before, and the Secretary of Defense, all due respect, in that presentation seems like a person who's unserious and is trying to deflect from the fact that he participated in a conversation on an unclassified commercial messaging app that he probably shouldn't have participated in.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist.
It's crazy, dude. They're crazy. What is this? Latter-day Saints?
Does the new LDS Church Q&A Gospel Topics page on religion and science tell us about the faith's longer intersections with that topic and where it currently sits in American culture? My name is Benjamin Park. I'm a scholar of American religion and author of the book American Zion, A New History of Mormonism. Last week, the LDS Church released 3 new Gospel Topics Q&A pages on crucial, controversial topics. I've already done videos on the one on race as well as the one on women. So let's dig into the third and final one, religion and science. Now, let me say at the outset that there's not really much new in this page. It's more a snapshot of where the faith has been over the last 2 decades, especially in pushing 2 key pillars in their mind, in their narrative of how the church relates to science. First, it emphasizes that the church seeks truth from whatever vantage point it can, trotting out 2 famous quotes from Brigham Young. Importantly, those very concepts of truth have always been contested, something that's not really dissected. And second, it insists that the church is neutral on important scientific topics, allowing members to come to whatever conclusion they believe is right. 2 important qualifications for that statement, however. First, while the institution may be neutral on these topics, there have certainly been a lot of LDS leaders who have not been neutral and have made specific statements on these topics that have had a feeling, an aura of authority. And second, while the church may not take specific stances, they definitely set up the normative boundaries for what members can do, say, believe, and investigate. So with those general pillars out of the way, let's dig into the history and then the contemporary relevance. It's notable that the church gives a precise year for when they adopted this neutrality stance. They say it was in 1931 after a discussion among church authorities. And that's true. There was a massive ideological dispute between the apostle Joseph Fielding Smith and the 70 and prolific author B.H. Roberts. Unfortunately, the page does not go into that dispute in this meeting, but that's where overspecialized nerds can fill in, because there's been lots of great historians who have written about this episode. This was an era in which all religions were trying to confront whether they can adopt evolution or not. This is just a few years after the Scopes monkey trial, where it was brought to court whether public school teachers can teach evolution. It was in that period that B.H. Roberts, a prolific author who wrote a number of the important manuscripts that were taught in Sunday school, wrote his final magnum opus, The Truth, the Way, the Life.
This is kind of boring.
Trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor.
Ooh. MAGAs out here. Republican women, we are the real ones. I had to mute that music. Hold on. Cleaning up the mess. Republican who introduced Trump Derangement Syndrome bill arrested for soliciting a minor. Oh. Ooh.
the libs are going to be big mad. Trump doesn't want Washington, D.C. to be Washington, D.C. anymore. He wants it to be Washington, D.A., the District of America. There is a reason for these name changes. He is dismantling the corporation that America has become. He's doing things that are very necessary. This man is always playing chess. Always. He's always 10 steps ahead. So give it a little bit of time and you'll see why he's doing this.
Hey, Nicole, we got sort of a bad news situation going on here. Okay, let's start with the bad news. So Trump will not be renaming the District of Columbia to the District of America. Okay, I'm sorry to tell you that. Now let's get to the bad news, Nicole.
You know that before we were the United States of America, that it was pretty common to refer to the nation as Columbia, right? It was in honor of Christopher Columbus. People referred to the area that we lived in before it was the United States of America as Columbia.
Nicole, you're in a cult. You know how I know that, Nicole? Because the audio
all through the American Revolution, it was like a heartfelt sentiment, a patriotic reference to talk about Columbia, the land of Columbia, the country of Columbia.
We're just defending with all your heart about Trump renaming D.C. It's fake. AI. Not real. Ain't that some shit, Nicole? That our president is such a raging dumbass that even when fake audio comes out of him saying some dumb shit, right away, his own fans are like, that's my guy. That's my brilliant little man out here playing chess, making libs big mad, always 10 steps ahead of them, bro. Is he? Is he, Nicole? Because it seems like you're 10 steps behind us. So why don't you catch up with us first, and then you can let us know about all these fancy chess moves that Trump is making, okay? Fuck. You are so bad at this. All right. Good luck.
Oh, the libs are going to be big mad. Trump doesn't want Washington, D.C. to be Washington.
Let's grab another one.
Now that Trump's made IVF affordable, I want to hear from the Democrats. Critique it.
Oh, you mean where he signed an executive order telling other people to look into... see if it can be made more affordable?
Critique it. Let me know. What do you hate about that now? Because you guys, you always shit on Trump for everything, and you can never admit when he does anything correct. So I'm going to ask you, critique this. Tell me, what negative piece of shit comment do you have now?
Hey, Megan, so this is super fucking easy to critique. What happened to free IVF? Remember when Trump promised you guys on the campaign trail that the government was going to pay for everyone's IVF? Now, Trump promised a lot of bullshit handouts on the campaign trail, but free IVF for everyone? Ooh, that was up at the top. Okay, we all knew that was never going to happen. Now, I'm not sure if you read the executive order on IVF, Megan. Just kidding, everyone in the whole fucking world knows you didn't read that executive order, so let me just tell you what's in it. It basically says, I hereby declare that we will look into how to make IVF less expensive. Good job, Megan. You guys are very easily impressed, Megan. Apparently that was enough for you to run out to your car and let everybody know that Trump just made IVF affordable. As if him saying something just makes it so. But sadly, Megan, here in reality, Trump is going to have to talk to a few people before the price of IVF just magically becomes affordable. But if he brings the prices down, I will say, good job. Now, we're still going to give you shit that he lied about making it free because he's a con man. We're still going to give you shit about that. But if he actually makes it more affordable, I will say, good job, Megan. And then you can run out to your car and say, I told you so, liberals. But until then, Megan, nobody gives a fuck. So let us know when the price is actually
stupid expensive.
All right, get to work. Good luck.
Now that Trump's made IVF affordable...
Yeah, IVF is insanely expensive. All right, guys, I'm out. I tried to watch some funnier videos at the end. We're doomed. I don't know what to tell you. We're fucking doomed. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for being here. Support the show if you want to. I don't give a fuck. Let's just shut it down. Have a good night. We'll see you sometime.
But I can tell you this about if this douchebag happens to see this particular show, you don't have the forking balls to call out the people on this planet by name and tell them exactly who they are and tell them the rest of the world who they are. You don't have the forking balls. You don't have the balls.
Okay, Scott.
Here we go, I think I started some shit. Listen off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the best, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Listen off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in the best, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet.
And they say that I'm a lunatic. Well, listen, bitch, I came equipped with a quick wit and a 6th sense for the stupid shit. Where my true believers? Y'all need Jesus.
Praise the Lord, head to the extreme.
All these false fucking prophets who profit off of gossip. Worshipping Trump's cock and begging for a throat deposit. Swinging fucking meat hammers like Thor in a thong. He's strapped to the shaft, beating his chest like he's King Kong. Starving for attention, I'ma make your gut burst. I'll be your huckleberry, I can quench that thirst. Baby eating lizard people, alien sex. What's next? Trump in a dress, fucking Flynn on his desk. A retard in a vest, climbing up 5G towers. Cause you told him if he did, he'd get fucking superpowers. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss him off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up, cause you ain't seen none yet. Here we go, I think I started some shit. Piss him off, it's about to get
I bought that viral chewing gum off TikTok. It's pretty good. And I feel like it helps my teeth. It's the remineralizing gum. It's called Underbrush from Nathan & Sons. Not too bad. It's not like normal gum. It doesn't flavor, doesn't last as long as shift, but it's all natural. And it's got nano hydroxy apatite in it, which is supposed to remineralize portions of your teeth, and it can even reverse some potential cavities and shit. It's pretty good.
Stop. What? I'll get my files. What are you doing? Stop. Hold on. Fucking stop. Dude, come on. Seriously.
Have a good night, guys.
Give me oh my God. Damn it. Here we go, I think I started.
I'm going to go jump off a bridge.
Piss them off, it's about to get lit. Get the place in them bets, you know that stage is set. You better buckle up.